is up with that? What's going on? Camera's all out of whack and everything's all distorted and stuff. How's it going? How's things? My OBS has just decided to have a real moment. There we go. Look there. I can see what's happening now. Crazy OBS. Yeah, the rat butts. What's up, everybody? Hello, hello. Hope everybody's having a pleasant evening and a good day. It's been a long and interesting and / weird day for me, just to be honest. It's been a weird one. I didn't get off on the right foot, like right out of the gate this morning, and I feel like I've sort of stumbled from one experience to the next. I don't know if I've necessarily been coordinated in any particular way. But welcome. How's everybody doing? Out on the left foot. I don't know. Not on the right foot? I guess that would be the left foot then, yeah. Yeah. Hope everybody's doing okay. I'm doing all right. It's just been a weird and long day. Lots of grading. Last week was spring break. I came back yesterday to work and had just an absolutely god-awful amount of emails. So that has taken a substantial amount of my time just to try to get through those, and then all of the other stuff that I would normally have to do. How sinister. Indeed. Definitely not orthodox, but perhaps heretical. Yeah, so the show is Adventures in History, and tonight is viewer request night. We are doing a viewer request on the Highland clearances, which is a period of time where a whole bunch of people in Scotland basically get kicked off their land. In your family research, you learn that you have ancestors who have been in the U.S. since before our independence, so that's pretty cool. That were here from Germany before the independence, they might have come over as mercenaries. Genealogical research is pretty cool stuff. You suspect England? That makes sense. There were Germans in charge of England at that time, so this doesn't really surprise me too terribly much. All right, so yeah, viewer request night means that this is a topic that has been chosen by the viewers, and this particular viewer request is one that everybody voted on. We had a poll, and people chose this one, so this is the one that we're going to do, and that's cool by me. That's sort of the whole point of having a viewer request stream, so that you all get to have some direct input over what happens on stream here. And at the end of the stream tonight, we will be picking our next viewer request stream. So you've met those reenactors. The types of reenactors that are around me are not the same type of reenactors. We'll just leave it at that, right? Question: Scotland, Ireland, what's the difference? Okay, so I'm going to treat this as if it is an honest moment, or an honest question, and basically, if we look at the borders here, Scotland is, well, are they really not going to show a border between Scotland and, okay, so this border right here separates the country of England, which is down here, and the country of Scotland up here. Zombie Lucky is in Edinburgh. Welcome. It's good to see you. I'm glad you're glad you come on by, and feel free to participate at whatever level you feel comfortable. Feel free to throw in some flavor context from where you're from. I'm sure that you've experienced a lot more stuff about this particular situation than I have firsthand. So there we go. Here's Scotland, here's Ireland, here's the Bloody Sea. Indeed. And Big Crowds is in Aberdeen. Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that I had so many friends from across the seas. I mean, I know I had people that watched from the various time zones across the ocean. But welcome, everybody. My name is Shane. For those of you that might be new, I teach college and history. Specifically, I typically teach history. I've been teaching a lot of sociology lately, but I've been teaching for about 15 years now. I've been streaming on Twitch here for coming up on about 2 years. It's almost my 2 year anniversary of streaming here on Twitch. It's almost my 2 year affiliate anniversary. How about that? I've been streaming actually 2 years already, but it started in 2020 and things are weird at that point. So, hey, Evo, it's good to see you. How are you? Hope you're doing well. Since it's their heraldic symbol, were there ever unicorns in Scotland, and why did the English kill them and hide their bones? Yeah. The unicorn is also the national animal of North Korea. Just to throw that one out there, so I don't know if there's any context that we might draw out of that. So you'll be lurking. All right, Evo, good to see you, my friend. Hope you're doing well. Doing well, thanks. Okay, cool. Yeah, it really is. And under the previous ruler, not the current one, Kim Jong-un, Kim Jong-il, Kim Jong-il supposedly found the tomb of the first Korean emperor, and inside of that tomb was the skull of a unicorn. And if Kim Jong-il said so, you know it has to be true. So there we go. Indeed, indeed. And we'll talk about that union tonight. And that's actually a substantial part of the larger picture of what we're doing tonight. Okie dokie. So, and I'm drinking Earl Grey tea. How appropriate, right? Wasn't there a Korean myth concerning a unicorn? Yes. That first God-sent king was birthed from an egg with a dragon that was fostered by a unicorn. So there you go. You only remember because you got a unicorn and a lion. Earl Grey, it is hot tea. No, this is not an over 18 stream. What's up, Schmont? But I'm saying things like unicorns and fostered, and it's okay to talk about sex. We're just not going to talk about it in a sexualized way, right? But also, hey, Schmont, it's good to see everybody. Hope you all are doing well. All right, so let's kind of dive in. As always, feel free to throw in all of your fun little comments and all the flavor text that you got. And you know, if you've got some questions, you're welcome to share those as well. And yeah, things are going to be good. I think this is going to be an interesting stream. This is not something that I normally talk about too much in class, so I'm actually excited to be able to talk about things that I don't really get a chance to talk about that much in college class. So here we go. All right, so first off, we've got some sort of groundwork to do, and that's a pun, you don't know it yet. But we've got to discuss the different parts of Scotland, all right? And this is going to be a substantial issue. So if we look at Scotland, here we see Scotland. Scotland is typically going to be divided into two portions. We have the Highlands and we have the Lowlands. Now specifically what we're talking about here is going to usually be elevation. And the Lowlands are typically going to be a little bit more arable. Arable is that fancy word that means farmable. The Highlands are going to have typically more rocky soil, and they were typically less densely populated. So if we look at all of Scotland, the major population is going to typically be down here in the Lowlands, which you might be able to recognize given the fact that a bunch of the cities are down here in the south. Now, it's also fair to note that we're not just talking about a situation of elevation, which we can actually see a lot better if we zoom in here on our actual satellite imagery. So here are the Highlands, and you can see them. They are high. And here are the Lowlands. Here, they are low. Here's the thing about it, though. Going back way, way far back in time, prior to even, let's say, England unifying as a country, the people groups that are in the different regions of Scotland are going to typically be slightly different. And the people that are here in the Highlands are typically going to be much more what are referred to as Gaels, or the word that we use today is Gaelic, right? And this, of course, is the language Gaelic as well, Now, you might say Gaelic, I thought that was Irish. Well, the there are different Gaelic dialects. Specifically, there is sort of a Scottish dialect, and then there's the Irish one, and there's actually a Welsh dialect, because these three areas are going to sort of be the bastions of the Gaels, the original old Celtic people that moved through way, way, way back in the 40,000s BC time period, right? Um, Scotland is the second best region in the UK. Is Scotland a country? Is the UK a country? Answer to both of those, yes. Scotland is a country. It is part of the United Kingdom, which is a sort of conglomerate country of all of the territories, not just the ones here. The larger Commonwealth includes several of the islands in the Caribbean, still technically parts of Canada. The larger British Empire has not completely fallen apart, and the UK still technically rules a lot of that area. Insert a Scot cursing here. Hey, Nick, good to see you. Scottish history starts with Braveheart in 1994. The UK has the longest official country title in the world, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Interesting. So specifically, Great Britain refers to this particular island. So the British Isles are all of these. So all of this stuff in here is the British Isles. And there are a lot of them. There are a lot of smaller islands here. You can see like all of these islands. These are part of the British Isles. Now, there is Great Britain, and that is this large island right here. So it's a little bit different. And then there's the United Kingdom, which is part of these, which includes Wales, England, and Scotland, and Northern Ireland, which is right here, right? Like Gale and Bob's Burgers. Not quite the same, but that's a good shot. You were in London last month. All that place is highly overrated. Maybe Manchester and other places are better. So far, Edinburgh wins out by far. Cool, cool, cool. If Queen asked Canada to fight for her, will they fight? That's an interesting question. I would think they would very strongly consider it. I would think that it would have to be from someone other than the Queen, though. The Queen still has sort of titular authority in Canada, and there are still royal representatives in Canada that have some levels of power, including the power to dissolve the Canadian Parliament, which is a maneuver that Justin Trudeau used not too long ago to get the Parliament dissolved. So I would think that they probably would, but I would think that this would be something that would be a little bit more of a diplomatic thing, where the Queen might ask Parliament to request Canadian responses, and then Canadian prime ministers would speak with British prime ministers, and they would work out a plan. I don't think that we would ever see potentially a direct overture from the Queen saying, "Hey, would you come fight for us?" I mean, I guess that could happen, and I think that even then they probably would. There's still a fairly strong tie between the British and the Canadians. So that's an interesting question, though. Maybe, who knows? Well, there we go, right? Well, see, she does still have political power. It's just that she doesn't actually typically exercise it. The Queen has to approve prime ministers. The Queen has to call into session Congress. I'm sorry, Parliament. I'm saying Congress because I'm clearly an American and I get these things mixed up in my brain. There are still political powers held by the Crown in the UK. It's just that they really don't flex those very much, and haven't for quite some time now. Elizabeth has actually sort of gone on record saying that she doesn't think the Crown necessarily needs to be very much involved in politics. When you say Queen, do you mean Queen Elizabeth or... Well, there you go. Hey, Lumpy. Fogage would fight for the Queen. Scottish trivia. The oldest living person in British history is a person from Scotland, Duncan MacLeod, 430 years old. Your cat is the only queen that you recognize? That's just ceremony. It really isn't, Vipers. It really, really isn't. Like right now, this afternoon, well, I guess it would be this morning in England, if Queen Elizabeth woke up in a bad mood, she could just call Parliament and say, "You are dissolved," and it would happen. That it is really political power. Um, for those of you referencing Highlander, the pun of the title tonight is sort of a double level pun. Um, you mean yes but no? See, that's the thing though. Like, if it is yes, it is yes. uh, it's mostly it's mostly following the regulations and the procedures of things. It would cause a constitutional crisis, as many wouldn't recognize it. Yeah, but there would be a lot that would, and it would be messy. It would be pretty messy. Anyway, as I was saying, the population of Scotland is going to be a little bit different between the Highlands and the Lowlands. Specifically, here, the Lowlands are typically going to have a population that is a little bit closer to what else is going on down here in England. So, when you get Anglo-Saxon invasions, which are going to happen in the 400s, and then you later get like Flemish invasions and Danish invasions and Norman invasions, some of those people end up getting into the lowlands, whereas the people that are in the highlands are typically going to be more sort of uniformly Gaelic. And that's an important idea to remember as well, because we're going to come back to this sort of difference in culture a little bit later on. Hey, Figment, what's up? Lumpy, I'm doing really well. How are you? So, that's sort of the difference in people and the difference in structure, but we need to lay a little bit of the groundwork about what's actually happening prior to the Highland clearances, because it doesn't just happen sort of out of nowhere. So what we need to talk about is something called the run-rig system. Run-rig system. And you're like, okay, that sounds pretty horrible. What is that? Well, it's basically, it's this. So if we look at this particular photo, this is of course a satellite photo, and what we see here is that the Earth has literally been dug up and turned into these long strips, or rigs, right? Oh, clearly aliens. Clearly aliens. Of course this is aliens. Now, this is of course in Scotland, and this is an example of what the run rig system used to look like. So prior to about the let's just say 1600s and backwards, most of the Scottish agriculture was done in a system based on something that's kind of like this. And basically what would happen is that this area would be farmed by a group of people, right? And when we illegal or legal aliens, that's where they first tried looking for the Oak Highland treasure. So the way that this would work is the clan leaders typically had control of the land, and they would break these things up into townships, right? And the members of the town would be responsible for farming out the land. So here's the way that it would work. Basically, you would get all of the people together and you would draw lots. And depending on which lot you got, it would be basically one of these little strips of territory. And that would be your little strip to farm. And you would sort of stay in your little zone. And then the next year you'd get everybody together and you'd do the same thing. And this particular system was initially kind of designed to try to make sure that there wasn't one person that sort of hogged all of the best land. You would literally be kind of doled out land by random. You never know if this year you're going to get the good piece or this year you might get the crappy piece. But this effectively allowed the clan leaders to make sure that they were at least doing something to try to keep the people below them roughly equitable. Now, clearly this was not a perfect equitable system, because what ends up happening in many of these situations is that the social stratification below the clan leader is going to prohibit some people from getting access to farming. So technically only people that were listed as husbandmen are going to be able to draw get a guaranteed draw of land every year. There were other people that were called cotters. This is Cotters. And cotters had the right to farm, but they weren't guaranteed a spot, and they weren't really at the table. If there was leftover stuff, a cotter might come in, or if you were a really big landowner and you were lucky enough to get 2 or 3 tracts of land, you might get a cotter to come work one of those, right? But a cotter is not guaranteed to necessarily have any sort of land whatsoever. So if you just get a suboptimal strip, you just starved. Theoretically, every strip of land was equitable, and they were supposed to have been divvied up by size and quality. So if you got worse land, you're supposed to get more of it, so that your overall yield would be roughly equitable to somebody that got really good land with a smaller portion. But we all know that's not likely to be the case all the time. Did they welcome back the cotters? It really depended on if they needed somebody to, kind of teach them how to do stuff, and if they had really bad hair, they might welcome back cotter at that point. Also, this was pretty predominant in the 70s, so. All that striping is why they started wearing skirts. Aww, not the truth. Figment is crying over aliens. A group project, but everybody's ability to eat depends on it. Sort of, yes. You don't want, Cousin Jimmy getting the good piece of land and being a lazy bugger and not actually doing anything with it. They start to call farming each morning. That's where the term twerk comes from. I appreciate your dry humor. Oh, you're very, very welcome. You were slain. The pun was too much for this humble potato. I love you all. It's great times here. So, what this did, again, the run rig system, it prevents certain people from being able to take over. One group doesn't always get the best land. If there were disputes among the different husbandmen, they would go to the clan leader or the clan chief, and the chief would then sort of solve the disputes and try to get everybody back on track and get everybody happy. In really big runs, so in townships that had a lot of runs in their system, you might have some little plots left free for grazing. So even under the cotter, you had another level that was basically, you had grazing rights, and these were people that were called grassmen. So I mention these people specifically because the idea of having herds was not really the way that Scots did agriculture. It wasn't really their system. They weren't really like shepherds that frequently. They might have had some sheep and some cows, for wool and meat and things like that, but it was not the predominant system. You follow the pun pig system. That's okay. I appreciate that as well. Runs in their system, maybe some more fiber. Well, they were growing pretty hardy crops here. Most of the stuff that they're growing is going to be pretty full of fiber. So, now, under the run rig system, if you were a landholder, you got the title of tackman. All right. So a tackman was typically going to be somebody that was the clan leader themselves, or the family members of the clan leaders, so sort of like the extended family of the clan leader, and you would get a township or 2, maybe 3 or 4, depending on how close you were to the clan leader, and your job would be make sure that the land that you have produces food and keeps everybody going. So these tackmen or taxmen are going to, did I spell that right? No, I didn't. Tax, there we go. And no, by the way, this is not where the term tax comes from. Taxman here, the word tax refers to a lease, because these taxmen who had large pieces of land were clearly not going to be able to do all of this work by themselves. They might have 3 or 4 townships that they needed to run, and what they would frequently do is keep the best stuff for themselves, and then they would lease out control of several other runs. If I have three particular townships, I'm going to keep the best one, and I might give my son the middle one to run, just to sort of get him ready, and then I'd lease out the third to some other person under the idea that that person was going to collect profits and then pay me my lease, right? So taxman here is just a person who has land and has enough land sufficiently to sublet this out to other people, right? Now, this particular structure is going to create a fairly high amount of debt, especially in the Highlands. So if we're looking at the run rig system in the lowlands, you can see that, again, this is much more arable land here. But the nobles and the clan leaders that were up in the Highlands are going to have a lot harder time producing stable and repeatable crop yields. The weather is very unpredictable. The seasons change in length and duration. There are problems with things like, sunlight. It rains a lot. It's always a guess on how exactly your crops are going to turn out. And in many situations, there were these large groups or large pieces of territory that just didn't make a lot of profit. And this was compounded by the fact that a lot of the clan leaders weren't necessarily the world's best when it came to saving money and handling money. And in many cases, especially as the nobility of Scotland became more centralized and you end up with a Scottish king, a lot of these clan leaders became sort of socialites. And this is not as true for a lot of the ones that were up in the Highlands. This is definitely going to become more true for the nobility that are down in the lowlands. And it's just not going to be the world's best situation. And the kings are going to start playing politics with the land. As we all know, one of the ways that a king can really show his disfavor with you is take away your land and give it to somebody else, right? Can't make enough food? Make scotch instead. Well, that's got calories in it, but it's not going to properly fill you up. I mean, you might get full in the Scottish sense, not Scottish, Swedish sense rather, but you're not really going to get too full in the stomach. Man cannot live on scotch alone. Anyway, so when we combine playing politics with land, poor spending habits of the Highland chieftains, and basically borderline profitable margins in the first place, there's going to be a lot of debt in the Highlands. And this is only going to get worse with a group of laws that come around, and they're called, goodness gracious, I'm kind of all over the place tonight. The Statutes of Iona. This is in the 1600s, late 1600s. But you will care less, yeah. Someone mentioned Sweden. I was making a Swedish joke, and you'll probably appreciate this. Someone said that, the Scottish people can't make enough food so that they can make scotch. And I said, well, you might get full of scotch in the Swedish sense, but you're not going to get full of scotch in the stomach. And Metrand and anybody that knows Swedish will get that joke. I'll just go ahead and fill you in. Full means tipsy or drunk in Swedish. So there we go. So two people. My wife actually taught me that. So my wife got the joke. You got that from context. And Nix is just drawing in all the blanks here. So, and I hope Metrand is now giggling. Also, hey Metrand, good to see you. And Viper's got it. So we've got people from all over. We've got all sorts here. All right, so what do the Statutes of Iona do? Well, they do a few things. This is very much a lowland noble flex on the Highlands. So the Statutes of Iona did particularly two things. At certain points in the year, all nobles in the sort of larger Scottish world had to go to Edinburgh, and they had to live there for a portion of the year. Now, that was fine for the lowland nobles who had, amounts of money that they could spend, and they could go to the capital and they could live at the capital and they could keep up social appearances in the capital and they could afford rent in the capital and all of that stuff. But for these Highland nobles who are already running sort of paper thin margins in the first place, this is going to start causing yet more debt, and especially here, things like debt to the crown. Debt to the crown. Yeah. And this is also going to force children of Highland nobles to be educated in the lowlands. So you've got to now afford tuition to send your kids down to the lowlands in order to make sure that they got proper education. And we all know what that means. That means the lowland Scots were looking at the Highland Scots and going, they're kind of crazy up there. We need to gentrify them, and we'll do that by making sure that we get to raise their kids. Why did they have to do that? So this was partially political because the King of Scotland recognized that his majority support came from the lowlands, and that if there were people that were going to give him trouble, they would be in the Highlands. So this was a way to literally keep an eyeball on the Highland nobles, where you literally have to come live in the capital where I am for part of the year, and I get to stare at you and make sure that you're not plotting. This is also a big flex. I'm the king. I can tell you what to do. You have to come to me. I don't have to go to you. I'm establishing my dominance by making you live down here. And this is also specifically designed to be somewhat of a financial burden. Like, they want it to be expensive because the people that are able to raise armies in rebellion are ones that can feed, clothe, and outfit those armies. And if I'm spilling a whole bunch of, if I'm spending a whole bunch of my money just being able to stay in Edinburgh, that's going to burn up a lot of the money that I would use for rebellion. Even the nobles from the islands. Oh yeah, this is everybody in Scotland. Everybody that answered the King of Scotland. The best part about Swedish full is that it can mean both drunk or full in English, or not empty. So you never know if a Swede is full or full after a good evening. One day, Metrand, maybe we'll get to hang out together and have a meal, and you'll get full and I'll get full, and we'll both understand what we mean here. Yeah, so this was a sort of a across-the-board Scottish decision, the Statutes of Iona were. So it's a big flex. Now, this is partially because the Kingdom of Scotland was trying to get a little bit closer to the Kingdom of England. And one of the things that happens in 1707, we get the unification. And in 1707, the Scottish Parliament is going to vote with the British Parliament to unify the kingdoms of Scotland and England. Now, this was not a uniformly popular decision. The Highlands did not really like this idea. And there were people, even inside cities like Glasgow and Edinburgh, that did not like this idea. But the people that did like this idea were primarily the lowland elite, the people that had a lot of trade ties, people that were already establishing business relationships with England and their larger empire. Scots and Ings unite, right? You organized quite the drunken whiskey tasting at KTH. Good memories. We lined up 13 whiskeys. Someone drank a shot through the nose. I mean, I've heard of snorting drugs, but not snorting scotch. That sounds like a blast. Not the nose part, though. Yeah, I don't think I'd want to... The nose is for exit of fluid, not for entrance of fluid. Not really my thing. So, the unification is going to bring a lot of attention to Scottish farming. Specifically here, there are going to be people that were in England that are going to now have a lot of interest in expanding and what they called modernizing Scottish farming. Now, it should be noted that by the 1700s, we are entering the barest early parts of the phase of what we would call the agricultural revolution in larger parts of Europe. This is an extension of the Enlightenment. We have lots of new ideas about how to do things like farming and new systems, and we also have a lot of new ideas, political ideas and economic ideas. And a lot of people are looking at Scotland as kind of like an untapped box of resources, and especially some of these nobles in England that are looking to make buddies with nobles in Scotland are hoping basically here to line their pockets with stuff, right? So there is a lot of interest when it comes to revolutionizing Scottish farming. So there's going to start being a lot of new introductions. We're going to start bringing in new stuff. For example, we're going to bring in crop rotation, right? So if you're not familiar with crop rotation, certain crops take a lot of nutrients out of the soil. And if you grow the same thing in this plot over and over and over and over again, basically you can run the risk of depleting the soil completely. So you grow the nutrient depleting crop, and then the next year you plant another type of crop in that field that actually restores the nutrients to the soil. So these are what we call nitrogen fixers. This could be something like peanuts or maybe clover that could be used for grazing. But these are different types of crops that put nutrients back into the soil. And then typically you would have a year after that where you wouldn't plant anything. You sort of leave the field fallow so that it would just naturally replenish from things like rain and things, like decay and poop and animals and worms and stuff all like that, right? So crop rotation is introduced in Scotland, and this does pretty good things. It brings a lot of new benefit. Meanwhile, Shane's ancestors are ruling the region to the left. Some of my ancestors had already started causing a little bit of murmurings against the king, and were sort of interested in booking it to the New World. And some of them had, I had, well, I guess they're not necessarily my direct descendants, but some of my family members in England were in cahoots with the Puritans. Sounds like George Washington Carver's ideas, only his, had more peanuts, right? You joined a bit in the middle of everything. What year is this? Oh, this is 1707 is when the unification happens. 1707. 2022. You can only imagine the scientists before crop rotation was studied. What do you mean the soil has energy in each type of crop? It's just dirt. Dirt is dirt. I see that meme. And tuna, of course, applies the current year, right? So we're going to introduce crop rotation, right? Things are going to get better. We're going to switch up stuff. We're also going to introduce new crops. Things that had been collected across the British Empire were going to start showing up in Scotland. Things like potatoes. Oh yeah, good old-fashioned potatoes come over from the New World. They make a pretty big splash in Europe, and they get into Scotland. Rye. Someone mentioned whiskey. Well, rye is going to show up in Scotland around this time. Clover, of course, I just mentioned that, is a nitrogen fixing group. Plant cabbage, turnips, lots of other crops are going to show up in Scotland as part of this larger economic / agricultural revival, if you will. A big sploosh, taters. You have yet to meet a potato you didn't like. Well, we've got a potato in the audience tonight. Lumpy is here, and he's a potato that I adore. He's a great dude, and you should go follow him. So, with this new stuff, we're also going to get new technology. We're going to get new plows, specifically here, plows that aren't run by hand. A lot of the plows that had been used in Scotland at that time were basically foot drills and hand plows where you sort of push things yourself. But we're going to get things like steel plows that are going to be a lot better. Also, we're going to start building new infrastructure. Things like roads. Because, roads are good for moving stuff around, especially through areas that are yet a bit, hard to reach, especially like the Highlands. You're working on your geisha fan as hard as you can, people. Got the vapors, right? Now, in the lowlands, there's going to be a bit of a change. And you're going to start seeing stuff like this. And you're like, it's only a wall. It's a big pile of rocks. Yeah, it is a pile of rocks. But specifically what this is an enclosure. And you're like, it's a rock wall there, bud. And it's just a long, skinny rock wall. Well, yeah, it kind of is, but here's the deal. This used to be part of a run rig system, and if you went over this way, there would be another wall that sort of went like this direction. And yeah, you start enclosing things like that, and what you end up doing is start owning the land. And you're like, wait. Didn't somebody own the land already? Yeah, but here we're going to start privatizing the land. And especially the lowlands, a lot of the chieftains who had previously, been clan chiefs are going to start adopting the mindset that they are now landowners. And if they build fences around all of their stuff, they don't have to lease this stuff anymore. They can just sell it. And you're like, wait, they just figured out that you could sell land? Yeah, because this is a pretty big abandonment of the established system in the lowlands. This is stuff that's coming from things like land privatization that's happening in England and the colonies, right? And a lot of people, especially that are, big nobles that are trying to gobble up land, hey, buying land, it's real estate, right? So these enclosures, big piles of rocks just mean fun to be had, if you ask me. Run rig ran out. Yeah, well, especially in the lowlands, you're going to start seeing efforts to privatize land, and you're going to start seeing boundaries set up, and land that used to be held by townships and brought out by lot every year are going to be enclosed with fences, and that plot is going to now be my land. Not our land anymore, my land. And specifically here, the land of the nobles. And then they start doing something a little bit new. And one of the things that is going to show up, especially in the early 1720s and 30s, is limitations on subleasing. So if you'll remember me mentioning these taxmen, these people that had tax, that would lease out land, people are going to start going, I don't like that. I don't like people leasing out land because I want to own all of the land. Okay, so imagine with me, we have a powerful noble, and he knows that in the north or in the Highlands, there are a lot of poor clan chieftains who are basically making most of their income by leasing out the land. So these powerful nobles in Scotland that have a lot of money go to the king and they say, look, check this drift. If you ban the ability to lease out land, what's going to happen is a lot of those nobles in the north are not going to be able to work all of their land because they don't have the capacity to work it themselves. So then they're going to have to sell it. And we have all the money and we can buy all the land up. And what this is going to start doing is going to start consolidating land ownership. And it's going to move away from small, self-sufficient farms to larger farms that are owned by fewer people. And specifically here, the lowlands nobility. You mean my dirt isn't just dirt? Then it's my dirt. Feels to me like the recent flush economy has led to rich folks owning a ton of property. I wonder how that's going to shake out. Doesn't feel too good. Foggett, you're predicting the future a bit. Yeah, you're predicting the future. So this is the system that sort of runs for a little while. And then some big stuff starts happening. Specifically, these guys. The Jacobites. Well, we're not going to go into the whole spiel of things, but basically James VII of Scotland, the King of Scotland, ends up becoming James II, King of England. And it turns out that the people of England don't really care very much for a Scottish king, and they run him off. This is the House of Stuart. Well, let me kick that down. House of Stuart. Well, a lot of the Scottish people are ticked off because they had a king and he was the king of everybody and it was great. And then those pesky English nobles ran off James, and there are several wars. They're called Jacobite rebellions. By the way, here James is transliterated to Jacob, and this goes through a whole bunch of biblical linguistics. But trust me here, when I say Jacobite, I mean people that are supporters of the House of Stuart. And the big majority of these people are going to be Scottish nobility. Casa de Stewie, right? Now they had to walk 500 miles and 500 more. Right? Because they were poor. La da da da. Chez Stu, right? So, the first big round of this is going to happen in the 1680s, but there's going to be a really big Jacobite uprising in 1715, and then there's going to be another big Jacobite uprising in 1745. And the one in 1745 is especially damaging because of this guy whose name is Charles. Now, if you know anything about Scottish history or British history, you might know this particular guy as Bonnie Prince Charlie. Also, if you've ever seen the show Highlander, you'll have heard them refer to Bonnie Prince Charlie about a bajillion times, because it turned out that Duncan was in the whole thing here. Bonnie Prince Charlie, indeed. Yep, so that's him. Now, he was part of the House of Stuart. He had been refuging in France, but he's going to find an army in Scotland, and they're going to cause a whole bunch of trouble. Bonnie Prince Charlie, indeed, now you have to drink. I actually messaged Cave and told him that if he watched the stream tonight, he would have to drink. For those of you that don't know, there was a period of time where Cave Geek was watching Highlander, the TV show, on his stream, and every time someone said Bonnie Prince Charlie, he would have to drink. So there we go. All right, so Bonnie Prince Charlie, he is the House of Stuart. The house that was ruling England at this point was the House of Hanover, so these are the Germans. Specifically here, this would be George II. And Charlie does pretty well for himself initially. He actually manages to not only defeat a British army inside of Scotland, but then he also invades England. And he does an okay job for a little while. And then he realizes that the revolution that he was hoping to lead was not showing up, because he had hoped that I'm the rightful king of England and I'm going to go down and restore the Stuart house and people are going to love me, and when I invade England, the entire countryside is going to arise to arms and they're going to greet me as a liberator, and everyone loves the House of Stuart. And he got down to England and people hated his guts and wanted him to go away. So he's like, oh crap, I didn't vote for you. You do not vote for a king. We got Charlie. Yeah, I know that meme. See, no one cares, right? So he ends up having to go back up north, and the army disbands, and he actually has to run back to France. Everybody hates Stuart. Well, not everybody. There are still a whole bunch of Jacobites that like his stuff. Oh my gosh, I used to be in your history class. So Kaya, welcome. Which history class did you used to be in? Because I've taught lots of them. Charlie bit my finger. You wear a Jacobite jacket? Okay. The one at North River. Oh man. That's been a long time ago. That's way back in time. If you know how to do a whisper, shoot me a whisper and tell me who you are, if you don't mind. You might like, I don't want to talk about that guy. That guy's crazy. I don't like that dude. So my first teaching job was at North River. This is in Tuscaloosa. There's a cut of formal kilt jacket that's called Jacobite. Speaking of, so here's the thing. You doubt they'd be here if they thought that. You never know. They might be coming here to ridicule me and spill all the beans about how horrible I used to be when I was a teacher. Those first few years that I taught, I was crappy. I really, really was. I got better. I got better, right? So, as a response to the collapse of the Jacobite rebellion in 1745, England decides, oh, we're about to crush Scotland. I was one of the coolest teachers. Well, I appreciate that. You don't have to blow smoke up my butt. You can just tell me the truth. It's okay. They passed something called the Heritable Jurisdictions Act. And you're like, what the devil is Heritable Jurisdictions Act? Well, here's the thing. This is something passed by England, by the Parliament in England, and the Heritable Jurisdictions Act is in 1746. This is right after the Jacobite Rebellion fails. And England is basically trying to punish all of the Jacobite supporters. So, one of the things that the Heritable Jurisdictions Act did was basically stripped all of the power of clan chieftains. If you were a Jacobite, you were out of power. Specifically, if you were in the Highlands and you were a clan chief still holding on to the old clan structure, you were no longer really able to effectively do your job. You had no more jurisdiction. You could not settle cases. You couldn't really even run basic day-to-day operations because you no longer had jurisdiction. So the idea here is that England had sort of inherited the jurisdiction of everything that was happening in the courts and the legal system in Scotland, and these clan leaders aren't really that big of a deal anymore. Also, you can't carry arms without written express permission of the king. So if you are walking around in Scotland and you've got on, a saber, you are in trouble. Also, there was a rider in this that was part of this, and it was called the Dress Act. And basically, if you know what this is, your good old-fashioned Scottish dress, this was banned. You could not wear a kilt, and you could not wear the formal Scottish dress. You also couldn't carry this gun right here. Did he pay you to say that? I don't have enough money. I'm still a teacher. Ooh, crud! You're not supposed to be seeing all of that. I was looking here to see if I had a whisper. I kind of want to know who Kaya is. Just to see if I remember any specific little goofy thing. Does this act create the production of sellotape? I don't think so. You have no power here, pretty much. Imagine going to bed a chieftain and waking up being a nobody because someone didn't like somebody else. Pretty much. You have something similar to that? Very cool. Are they not Kaya? I don't recall teaching a student named Kaya with lots of A's in it. No. So, Heritable Jurisdictions Act is going to really curtail a lot of the stuff going on in Scotland. Early fashion police, very much. So you can't wear that. It's literally against the law. This is a big problem because what this is going to do is really sort of wreck the old Scots clans. Like after, yeah, it's cultural suppression. It really, really is. This particular law was basically designed to eliminate the Scottish heritage and the way that they had done things. And to be clear, this is something that had already begun to degrade a little bit because of the introduction of all these new farming techniques and the land reforms that had been going through in Scotland already. Was the language affected as well? Yeah, they really didn't like Gaelic being spoken. It's really hard to outlaw that across the board. Oh, yeah, man. I know who you are. What's up? It's good to see you. I did get a whisper, and I do remember. Was in the last class that I taught there. Specifically, I taught Kaya civics. Nope. Was it civics? I'm pretty sure you were in my civics class, if that's right. But it's good to see you. Hope you're having a good one. Welcome on in. We're talking history still. I'm still that guy. Now I'll just say but, and I can get away with it. So cool stuff, right? They didn't really like people speaking Gaelic, but it's really hard to go up into the Highlands and say nobody here can speak Gaelic. The bans were mostly at things like court, right? You couldn't show up to court speaking Gaelic. You couldn't conduct any business in Gaelic. Like if you're going to write out a contract, it had to be in English. You couldn't pass laws or do anything. I remember how you put up our exams on the wall. Yeah, like if you, I used to do this thing in my class where if you made 100 on a midterm or a final, you get to put your paper on the wall, and I would like tape it up to the wall. So now he teaches civics type R, the ultimate flex. It totally was a flex, right? Like I studied my butt off and I made an A on this exam. It's good to see you. It really is. I hope you're doing well. Let me know how you're doing. I mean, you don't have to do it here in the chat. You don't. I mean, you can totally keep yourself private, and I won't tell anybody who you are. It's really good to see you. I hope you're doing all right. I hope that the world is treating you well, whatever is going on. It's really weird that we just sort of ran across each other, but you know, this is the way that the world works, right? Anyway, so. Your AP Bio teacher put the names on who got 5s on the exams on the wall each year. Nice. You're in college? Awesome. That's cool. What are you studying? Is it history? Is it history? It's probably not history. You get to, oof, okay, you were worried about the potential FERPA violations of posting students' grades. Oh, no. I didn't make them do it, but if you wanted to, you could stick it up there. It was a total flex. It really was. Oh, yeah, there's a Discord. We hang out on Discord, and yeah. If you have that, you can... Poli-sci! Oh! Maybe I had part of that. Maybe I had like a little part of that. I'm totally gonna claim that. I don't know if it was me or not, but I'm totally gonna claim it. Okay, so this is going to actually introduce the first round of what are going to be the Highland clearances. So these start in about the 1760s. So just a few years after the Heritable Jurisdictions Act, you're going to start seeing actual land clearances. Now, what are we talking about when we say a clearance? What this is going to be is a formal breakdown of the run rig system, and it's going to be a formal moving around of the population, right? So this is being done by the government, and they are saying, we will no longer do this. You will now go over here and do this other thing. So they are clearing out the land. Now, this is going to open up with land auctions, specifically after the Heritable Jurisdictions Act passes. A lot of the restrictions that were in place, especially this idea that you can't lease out your land anymore, is really going to start biting the Highland nobles. And they're going to have to sell a lot of their land. But instead of just selling it directly, one of the things that they're going to try to do is run auctions. They're actually going to auction off part of their land. And a lot of times this is not by choice, this is by financial necessity. They've got such giant debts. Remember that they're still having to go live in Edinburgh. They're having to send their kids to Edinburgh for school, or to the lowlands for school, right? So this is expensive stuff. So do you go into massive amounts of debt, or do you auction off your land? And what's inevitably going to happen is that instead of being sold to a group of farmers or a group of land workers, these are going to be sold to single owner buyers, right? So there's not like a DOA, a decentralized group that's going to put a whole bunch of money together and buy the run rig system and sell it as an NFT on the internet. It's going to be bought up by rich landowning nobles. And when this happens, they're going to get rid of the run rig system and they're going to introduce something else called the crofting system. I don't think if the Discord command went off as it should. Oh, did it not really? Let's see. Are any of the commands working? Let's do Lumpy Dragon Potato. Oh, well, none of the commands are working. Let's go to Streamlabs and kick this pig and see if we can get it to work. Oh, Streamlabs. What the devil are you doing? I don't want to play tic-tac-toe. I want to go to my CloudBot. Commands. Let me turn it off and on again. Have you tried turning it off and on again? All right, let's try this. Still not working. What the devil? Let me just turn Streamlabs. Oh, how is CloudBot turned off? I did not turn CloudBot off. What? Streamlabs, don't be a doof. I did not turn off the bot. The bot turned itself off. Oy, the joy of streaming, indeed, right? What if someone gets assassinated? I don't know, man. I don't know. If somebody gets assassinated, we'll just have to deal with it. All right, so the crofting system. What the devil is the crofting system? Well, here's the deal. The crofting system is going to take these farms, these big farms that were run rig systems that were more or less self-sustaining, that had people that had guaranteed land rights and people that had guarantees of crop yields. And they're going to move a lot of these people to basically big bunkhouses. And while your family might live in one place, you as the worker, or maybe you and your son, or sometimes even your whole family, would have to go live in these little crofting houses that were sometimes hundreds of miles away, specifically along the coastline. Because the idea here was, we have these subjects, right? And we can't just tell them, you're no longer going to be able to work. That just makes angry subjects. So the idea here is we're going to move them. We're going to take them off of the land where we can do agriculture stuff, and we'll move them to the coast. And they'll live in little huts, and they'll live on the coastline, and it'll look like this. This is actually a preserved crofting hut. And there would probably be 2 or so families, or maybe 3 families living in one of these, and you can see here it's right on the coastline. So this might have been a fishing croft. This could have been a kelp croft. So one of the things that became a fairly common crop to finger quote farm was kelp. Yeah, 2 to 3 families. And these were not going to be self-sufficient. Looks like the one from the Selkie movie you watched the other day. Nix, what? Oh, crud. I think I may have watched that same one, where the little girl sang and was part was part Selkie. Oh, crud! What's the name of that movie? I literally just watched that like not a few weeks ago. The Secret of Rowan Inish. I don't think that's it. Brittany, if you're still in the chat, What was that movie that we watched that was made by the people that the same group of people that did Book of Kells, the animated movie? Oh, so you watched a long live action one. So Song of the Sea is the movie that we watched recently, which is really good. If you like animation with a little bit of a Celtic flair, watch Song of the Sea. It's a pretty good movie. I liked it. Okay, so yeah, we're going to take these people, and they're going to be really happy about this. We're going to move them from farming, which is what they've done for their entire world, and we're going to move them out to the coastline, and we're going to turn them into fishing crofts, or kelp crofts. Well, what are you going to do with the land? What are you going to do with the land? Well, oops, sorry. This is what you're going to do with the land. And you're like, you're going to turn the land into a sheep? Yeah. Well, not specifically the land into a sheep, but you are going to start grazing sheep. And sheep, and especially the wool market in Scotland, becomes, the big thing. Oh, the big thing. Here's the thing about sheep farming, though. You need lots of land because they eat a lot and they have to roam around a lot. So the crofting system is also clearing land for sheep farmers. And, oh man, they don't care for the sheep very much. Now, the people that do love the sheep are the nobles who are making a killing because wool was really, really profitable. And it was way more profitable than growing and trying to scratch a living out of the Highlands just doing farming. And you could have the same amount of land. Tuna. Oh my gosh. Not. No, the sheep of things to come, right? Oh, dude. So the wool market is really, really big. And it's causing a lot of people to lose their land. A lot of the landowners who are still able to hold on to some of their territory even started moving their own people out. So these were even Highland people that were sort of stuck in this debt area where they knew that sheep was guaranteed money and farming was not guaranteed money. So there were even some people that kind of sold out their own land and moved their own people. But the majority of this is being done by especially English and some lowland investors that are moving up into Scotland and pushing these people out so they can start growing sheep. You had an Irish lecturer today who talked about the sheep farming, land use, and folklore in Ireland, Scotland, and Iceland. It was a good lecture, but you've really been tired lately, so you don't recall too much of it. Oh, that's unfortunate. I mean, it's cool that you got to listen to an Irish lecturer. That'd be really neat. But the crofting system is a bit of a mess because, again, we are expelling landowners, these people that had been previous holders of rights. They had access to land, they had guaranteed profits, and now you're going to move them across the country perhaps to a new lifestyle that they're not used to, right? If all I've done all my life is farming, and you say, okay, now you're not going to farm wheat anymore, you're going to go over here and you're going to be a kelp farmer. I don't know how to do that. I don't want to go do that. I've never lived here and done that before. And now you're cramming me in one of these little houses with a few other families and we're, not having a good time. And again, these crofts were so small that they were not designed to be self-sustaining. They are going to require community efforts, and these people that are doing crofting that are fishing are supposed to basically make up their diet with their fishing. Like, we don't have food. Well, you have fish. Like, yeah, but like all we have is fish. Oh, you'll be fine. And what this ends up doing is making a lot of these crofters revert to farming on the little bit of land that they have. And they especially start farming potatoes, because potatoes can produce a lot of nutrient-rich food and not a lot of land. And a lot of these crofters who had access to agricultural knowledge from previous versions of their employment are going to start becoming very, very, very reliant on potatoes because they can't sustain themselves otherwise. There's no way for them to, basically get out and around the fact that they don't have enough food to sustain themselves. So there's kind of a mess. This game really needs to update its crafting system. It's very imbalanced, right? They need to nerf the nobles. They're getting one up, man. There's just too much DPI. Nice potato crop you have there. But it'll be shame if the blight hit it. Well, just wait. Just wait. Potatoes. Boil them, mash them, stick them in a crofter. You know, there we go. So the first phase of this stuff really sort of sputters out around the end of the 1820s, because around that time there's going to be a fairly big economic collapse. So the end of the 18 teens and the beginning of the 1820s, there's a big shift in global markets. The biggest issue is that, well, this guy is gone. You're off for a walk with a friend, being healthy. Yeah. All right, Tuna. I'm sorry, Figment. Your name is the same as Tuna's. Figment, good to see you. Thanks for dropping by. Hope you're having a good one. Enjoy the walk. So this guy, of course, is Napoleon, and he was gone. By 1815, he was no longer a deal. And what that means is that all of his territory that he had conquered in in Europe, was going to go back to its own thing. And specifically here, the trade imbalance is going to become zombie. For teaching history, and so you don't just give it to a hot tub streamer later on, feel free to use it towards procuring your own hot tub for the stream. Bad jokes aside, good job with the teaching and the discussions. Always interesting, but it's past 2 a.m., so you must go to sleep. Zombie, thank you so much for those bits. I really do appreciate that. And you are always welcome already, but you're always welcome. And I hope you have a good one. So Lumpy, I don't know if I told you or not, or if you were around when I announced this, but I actually did get a newer graphics card. So I was using an NVIDIA GTX 460. Yeah, it was older than some of the students that I teach. I'm Spartacus. Tuna, thank you so much for gifting that sub to my lovely wife. Okay, so yeah, I had a 460 and I upgraded to a 970, which is not the world's best upgrade. I recognize this. You know, a 970 is still several generations old. However, I was able to move to NVIDIA encoding for OBS here. My computer is running substantially more smoothly, as noted by the fact that I can zoom here on Google Earth without my entire computer collapsing, which is pretty brilliant, and I really appreciate that ability. So at the moment, I don't need a new graphics card. It would be nice to have a fancier one, but I don't necessarily need one. I would like to put that towards maybe having a trip somewhere. Maybe. OBS is an integral part of Scottish history. Yeah, pretty much. 970 will last you a good while for basic computing needs. That was what I ascertained, and my wife actually convinced me to go ahead and spend a little bit of money. I did have it in the Twitch budget. For those of you that don't know, all of the money that I collect from Twitch goes back into the Twitch stream. So, like, all of the lights that I have here, and the camera, and the microphone, and the computer, and all of the lights behind me, and a lot of the stuff that's even here on the shelves as decorations has come from you all. The layout that I have here, the cute little adventure Shane that's down there, our Spartacus emote, all of these things have been procured with support from you all. And I really do always appreciate it. Twitch field trip to Italy. So I don't know. I guess I can kind of tip my hand here a little bit. There's a possibility that I'll go somewhere this summer. I don't know anything firm yet. I don't even necessarily want to say what's on the table because I don't want to get excited about it. There's a chance. It's a non-zero chance. I'm not getting my hopes up though because I've been burned too many times before. But there's a chance that I might go do some fancy schmancy archaeology typed field survey stuff this summer. We'll see. I don't know. But if that does happen, we might do some fundraising stuff around here, and I might do some fancy, weird long streams and stuff like that. I guess not murdering him counts as keeping him alive. You heard that trips to the Ukraine are cheap right now. I would not go to Ukraine. I would not go to Ukraine. It would not. No, it would not be Ukraine. All right. So we have a crafting system. Things have changed. Sci-fi. Thank you. And tanks. Thank you so much for those bits. Crafting system is not perfect. It's not perfect. And then Napoleon goes away, and the European trade arrangement just completely destabilizes. Because I don't know how much you all are familiar with Napoleon, but one of the things that he had decided to do towards the end of his reign was basically bankrupt England. And he had decided to do this by establishing something called the Continental System, whereby he was basically not going to trade with England or Britain or any of its colonies or the UK at all. And anybody that was under his control was also not supposed to trade with Britain and England and all of these other UK countries and all of their territories as well. So when he's gone, all of these countries now have the ability to trade with whomever they want to. And even though England stood to be a benefactor of this, it's going to completely destabilize the market because things like wool, which had been at a really high demand, are going to drop off and lose about 75% of their market value. Kelp, nobody cares about kelp anymore because there are better places to get it. So Ukraine has a lot of Russian tourists visiting. Moose, I appreciate the joke, I really do. The only thing that I would worry about personally with jokes about that particular situation is I never want to make it look like the Russians in Ukraine right now were invited. And I know that this is sort of getting like nitpicky kind of thing here, but the Russians aren't welcome in Ukraine, and they're not visitors, and they're not tourists. This is a unlawful, unjust, and horrible invasion of a sovereign nation by a dictator with an ego complex. So I know that's like me coming across way more serious than I normally would, but right now it's kind of a raw nerve moment. So Moose, you know you're always welcome, and I love you, brother. But I have to say something about that one. You can make fun of Putin all you want to, and you can make all kinds of jokes like that. But that one I'm going to have to. All right. So things are going not so great. Also, all these soldiers are going to come back from the war. All these wars that Britain was fighting, try to get rid of Napoleon. So now unemployment is really high, and we actually have more people. And what are we going to do? Well, we're going to start forcing leaving Scotland. So the second round, or the second phase of clearances, starts in about the late 18 teens and in the early 1820s. And this is going to be forced exodus. This is immigration, so they're leaving Scotland, and they're not moving from the Highlands to the shore anymore. They are leaving. They are getting sent out. Specifically here, they're being sent to places like Canada. They're being sent to various other UK Commonwealth territories. They're being sent to Australia because there are too many people in the Highlands, and we need more territory and fewer people. So the second round is actually much more forced, and it does get violent. And specifically here, the way that they're doing some of this forced exodus, especially in the 20s and 30s of the 1800s, is that they are rounding up people that have debt. And I don't know how much you all are familiar with the way that Britain did a lot of the colonial stuff. One of the ways that they got people for their colonies was by making certain parts of their colonies debtors' prisons. Hey, you need somebody that can go work on a farm in Canada or Australia, round up some debtors in Scotland and send them over there. And it just so happens that because we've wrecked the Scottish economy, there are a whole bunch of people up there in debt. So, we've got instant exports. We're going to send you all to some other part of the country. This is not by choice in most situations. Now, we'll talk about some stuff in just a little bit that is kind of different. So that's what's going on in the 20s and 30s. Now, by the time we hit 1846, I don't know if you know this, but here you go. There you go. Someone mentioned a blighted potato. And there is a potato with blight. I think it's time for you to head off to bed, but take care. All right, Metrand, have a good night. Sleep well. Sci-Fi says, you're sure that some of these folks were your ancestors? Quite possibly. Australia's ears are burning. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of Scottish people that end up. So here's the thing, like, Crocodile Dundee. Dundee is actually a city in Scotland. So we could make a viable guess here that Crocodile Dundee might have been the descendant of someone that had been run out of Scotland and sent to Australia. So there we go. New York slums are looking pretty good right now. Well, there's a blighted potato for you. 1846. This is the Great Potato Blight. Crocodile Dundee was your great-great-great-great-grandfather. The Highland potato famine kicks in 1846. This is part of the larger potato blight issue that hits Northern Europe. This is, of course, the one that is the same as the famous Irish potato famine. If you remember, when the crofters had figured out that their plots of land were not self-sufficient, they had turned to potatoes to fix their food supply issues. And when the potato blight hits, this is going to put something like 200,000 people at risk of being basically starved out of existence. Blight, 6 letters, too many U's in a wordle. Also, potato. Did I miss something? Did I say potato E with an E on it? Did I pronounce potato with an E on it? Potato or potato? Or is it potato? I don't know. You say potato, I'll say potato. Whatever. If that's what you were going for, I hope that I walked into that one. So, when the potato blight hits, to the credit of the government of England and Scotland, they're going to recognize that this is going to be a problem. And the UK tries to pass some laws that force a lot of the Scottish nobles to take care of their people. And the churches are going to get involved a lot. There's actually some cross-denominational participation up in Scotland, and we haven't talked about religion a lot, mostly because it gets very convoluted and complicated, but it should be noted that there were a lot of religious differences in Scotland as well, between different parts of Scotland, between people that were Protestants or Catholics, and even different types of Protestants, right? So there were even church organizations that were cross-denominational trying to help out with the blight, and some of the nobles in Scotland were much more forthcoming with assistance. Some of them didn't have the money to assist, right? They just literally did not have the money to spend to try to help people out. And this is going to start hurting pretty badly in the population. And this is going to be sort of the last big round of the clearances, because a lot of the crofts that had been sort of set up to be safety valves for the first round of clearances are going to utterly fail. And then What do you do with the people in the crofts after you've already moved them from the Highlands? You already moved them out of their run rig system. You moved them to a crofting system, but the crofting system is not falling apart. What are you going to do with those people when it falls apart? Well, typically you send them to places like Australia. And in some of these instances during the potato blight, which goes on for about a decade, from 46 to 56, you just lost today on one of those words with a similar blight site. What's up, Uncle Bill? How's it going? Good to see you. So, in some of these instances, there are going to be nobles that have disposable funds that can actually pay the way of some of these people to places like Canada or places like Australia. But in many instances, they're just going to sort of load them up and, debt them over there. So you show up to one of these places and you show up in debt because the noble that kicked you out of your land doesn't have any money to pay for your trip over, but they also don't have money to feed you, and your food supply is gone, and they're trying to clear out the rest of the land because the prices of wool are so low now that they need more sheep. Over the course of this particular whole thing here, the first and the second round, what is this going to really represent? So what is the impact of the Highland clearances, and what was the sort of the reasoning behind it, or behind them rather? In the lowlands and the Highlands, this is really an overhaul of their entire system, right? If we look at where they started prior to the clearances and how they showed up by the end of the clearances. So even if we just go like from 1700 to about 1850, right? So in those 100 years, that is going to completely overhaul the way that the Scottish people lived. This is also going to reshape the economic futures of basically everybody in Scotland. There were very, very few people that came out of this without some change in economic fortune. Most people are going to go down in economic fortune, and a few people that were fairly well off to begin with are going to promote themselves pretty successfully through these actions of clearances. Also, the overall population of Scotland it's hard to estimate exactly how many people are going to die from things like starvation, or get moved out of Scotland overall, or get moved to different parts of Scotland and then fall apart. But there are estimates that place the population dropping by up to a third. And now I should note that there are some people that say that the population of Scotland dropped a lot closer to a half. I think that a lot of the estimates that are that high are, well, I'll just go ahead and say it. I think that a lot of the ones that are way up, like 40% or 45%, are very biased. There is a lot of hurt feeling and a lot of attempts by certain historians to cover this stuff up and other historians to, kind of say this stuff. And we'll talk about that in just a second. I'm kicking you out. I own this land now. I'm not paying you anything. You have to pay for the pleasure of leaving my new land. Yeah, pretty much. That's what happened to a lot of people in these situations. So, what was the reasoning behind this? What were the reasons that people gave for these clearances to happen? Like, why did this need to happen? Well, there's a lot of different camps, right? Some people said, what the Highland clearances was a modernization of an archaic region. That the clan system of Scotland was a relic of older times, and that it would be better off for the people if they modernized. So this was offering them a way to pull themselves out of the past and catch up with the modern times. So that's just one of the ways of looking at it. Now, another way that a lot of people look at it is that this was a massive philanthropic endeavor. That this was designed to better the people not just to pull them out of the past and modernize them, but to enrich their lives and make them just better. This was purely a what we might call a philanthropic or an amicable exchange of circumstances, where the people with the means were trying to go in and I don't know, do something good for these people that were up there. Now, there's also a school of thought that says that this whole thing was basically wrapped up in cultural differences, and that the people that were typically more Anglo-Saxon just didn't like the Celtic culture of the Highlands and thought that they were uncivilized and uncouth and basically either needed to be completely eliminated or weakened to the point that they would have to assimilate to the larger United Kingdom culture. And all of these ideas have some level of validity, but if you want to see, if you just want to look at what people have written, there are people that wrote, that have these big diaries where they are talking about how much good that they are doing for these people, and they individually really think that what they're doing was a good thing during these Highland clearances. And we kind of have to take them at face value, even if what they were doing isn't actually good. I don't think that this was something that really came out the best for the Scottish people, considering the fact that many of them starved to death. Tens of thousands of them got sent outside of the country to a new area that they might not have even wanted to go to. This was not being done equitably. This was not being done in a way that was what we might call fair or balanced. So I don't think that this could really be looked at as a fully philanthropic endeavor or some sort of amicable attempt at modernizing. I do think that there is a substantial element of we just don't like the way that they live, and we're going to try to get rid of it. And let's be clear here. If we're looking at countries, just kind of in general, in the 1700s and 1800s, and we're looking at a list of countries who decided that they had kind of the best way to live, and then tried to export that way of life to other countries, England's at the top of that list, right? If we're talking about who took over a lot of the world and then said, we have the best way of life, you should live like us, and if you don't agree with it, we're just going to make you do it. That's England a lot of the time. Now, of course, there's the French Empire and the German Empire and the American Empire, and those are all people doing the same thing too, but especially by the 1840s, England's the biggest empire in the world, right? In the world. So the ladies punch I'm not following Fogage, I'm sorry. Punch the ladies, I'm sorry, the ladies exercise people who lunch. I just don't get it. I apologize. I might be really slow tonight, which is possible because I've been kind of slow all day, just to be real. Dirk. That's all that I had planned for the Highland clearances. So I hope that explained what went down and how all of that stuff happened. But as always, we don't have to go anywhere quite yet if you don't want to. In fact, one of the things that we need to do is figure out where we're going to go. So, are there any more questions about this particular thing? Any more ideas? Any more thoughts? People who try to do good. Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying now. All right. What's in the news? Ladies who lunch. Rich people who with too much life. I see. I got you. Something not Oscars or Ukraine related. Well, yeah, that's. You mean that there are things other than the Oscars or the Ukraine going on? I thought that's what everything in the world was. No, I understand. I'm not done talking about it, but I definitely appreciate that we don't just have to talk about that. Um, so I was talking with my with the mods earlier today, and I was commenting on how weird the situation in China is right now. Uh, I know that a lot of people haven't been paying attention to China, but I sort of always pay attention to China. And China is having some really big lockdowns right now, especially in some big cities like Shanghai. Shanghai is their largest city. Shanghai has a population of about 26 million people in it. And over the course of the last few days, Shanghai has gone through some really, really restrictive lockdowns. They posted numbers of, they had about 3,500 COVID cases over the course of the last few days. And because of 3,500 cases in a city of 26 million people, they locked down a whole bunch of the city. And what's crazy is that the version of COVID that's going around over there right now is this sort of sub-variant of Omicron, the BA.05 thing or whatever it's called, the Omicron light. And of those 3,500 people, only about 50 of them were symptomatic. And yet, they shut down a big chunk of the city, including a lot of the city center and a lot of the residential areas. Because China is just not playing right now. And I posited to my friends that I wonder if there is some sort of ulterior motive here. Like the Chinese Central Party understands that they're not going to do very well economically this year, and as a way to cover having a poorer than expected economic production, they're going to shut down the cities, and then when their numbers show back bad, they're going to say, well, we had to do this to protect people from COVID. And I don't know if that's the case, but it's really weird that they would resort to particularly such very strong draconian measures against a version of COVID that is really low in mortality rates and really low in symptomatic rates. 50 people were symptomatic in a city of 26 million, and they shut the city down. That's really weird to me. I mean, they might have just been like way overprotective, and they're trying to basically stamp it out. And they have this policy called zero COVID policy, where they're basically trying to get their COVID cases down to zero, which in China is a ridiculous concept to begin with. But I'm wondering if there's something else going on. I can't prove it. It's just speculation. It's just something that's sort of floating around in my head. But it's very, very odd to me. And when I saw that today, I had a lot of mental dominoes start falling down. So there you go. That's what's in the news. There's 900 million of the world today. 1.4 billion. Better learn to like them. That's what I say. Yeah. Do you trust the 3,500 number with the understanding that any estimate is probably underestimate because of the asymptomatic cases? Sure. I mean, at this point, it would actually 767. I'm Spartacus. 7. Thank you very much, and welcome to the adventure. Fogger, that's a fair question, but in my thinking, and again, I'm sort of out on a hypothetical limb here. I might even should put on the opinion hat. But my thinking goes like this: if you're going to shut down a city, why would you lowball the number? Right? Why wouldn't you report a full, bigger number and say, look, this is actually a really, really big problem. We have to shut the city down. It feels to me like if there were a whole bunch of really, really big outbreaks. And I mean, clearly the 3,500 numbers is absolutely an undercount because like you said, people aren't showing symptoms. They're not going to get tested. Didn't they report more than 34,000? Yeah, I mean, they had tens of thousands of people that were catching it back in 2020. And they had big shutdowns like this. But they're doing the same level of shutdowns now in places like Shanghai that they were doing back in 2020 when they had tens of thousands of cases. So it was, I don't know. There might be nothing there. I might be sniffing up the wrong tree. It just felt really weird to me that they're taking such a kind of a bold approach to this particular situation. I don't know what that means. You're free to, of course, develop your own ideas. I might just be talking out my butt here. So, all right. One thing that we can do before we wrap up, it feels in control if they overreact. That's true, and they definitely like to feel in control, and the party likes to act in control even when it's not in control. All right, everybody, so here's what we're about to do. We are about to vote on our next viewer request stream. So I'm going to, I've actually already pulled over the number 2 position from the last poll. So what I need from you all are 3 ideas, and I'll just take the first ones that pop up, of things that you would like to have happen in a viewer request stream. So whatever you think is interesting, history of rats. I don't know if I could do a history of rats. Okay, you're kidding. I was trying to give it. I was trying to give it a shot. History of painting. The Black Death in Flint. Okay, we'll do that. History of historiography. Well, we've got our 4, but I could totally do the history of history. All right, so I'm about to start a poll. Everybody in the room can vote. History of diseases carried by rats. Well, we've got Black Death on the list, and that's what I was trying to think. I was like, can I make that a whole stream? But we'll go with Black Death, and that's a lot more full thing, and we'll definitely talk about like Norwegian brown rats and stuff like that when we do the Black Death, if we do the Black Death. But I'm about to hit start. We've got a poll coming. Everybody gets to vote. If you are listening to the sound of my dulcet tones, you get to vote. You do not have to be a follower. You do not have to be a subscriber. Everybody gets a chance to vote, and you should go vote right now. So, mouse rat, the history of mouse rat. All right. So we've got options, and these are good options, and you get to go vote on whatever you want. Go forth and vote, my friends. Rat of Wind in the Willows. Yeah, he's a water rat. Old ratty. Everybody gets to go vote. Everybody. So if you have not voted, you can go vote. Like literally right now. It's okay. Only about half of the people have voted. You can vote. Is it terrible you didn't vote for your own suggestion? Nah. Nah. Somebody did. I don't know who did, but somebody did. Everybody gets the vote. Everybody. Yes, you. And you don't have to come back. This is not an agreement that I must come back and watch this. You just get to vote. I don't have cool little stickers to give you if you voted, but everybody does get to. Even now, you can go vote. It's just also cursed, alas. All right, I'm going to start looking to see if there are people hanging around that we might go raid. And there are, and I know where we are going to go when it's time for us to raid. everybody gets to go vote. And you haven't done it yet, you know who I'm talking about. If you're out there and you haven't voted yet, you get to vote. Even if you're the person that just came in the room and you have no idea what's going on, very quickly, click above you. Open up that poll. Let your digital voice be heard. It's more like Dairy Maine. That's unfortunate. Let's see who Maple Mystery is. I don't know who this is. I typically have to go check people out before I go and raid anybody. I usually like to spend a little bit of time.
Ordered for a brownie batter shake and a yellow cake batter.
They're not currently online. I'll drop them a follow, and next time they are online, I'll see what we can do. All right, so we have, with 6 votes, the Black Death. Just like Nancy Reagan used to say, everyone vote. Oh, they're not currently, just stopped. Unfortunately true. The Black Death it is. Hey, hey, I win. There you go. All right, so, I might have a bit of a surprise on that one, but I'll keep my mouth shut until I can confirm that. But Black Death is an interesting stream topic, and we'll see what we've got going on with that. We'll see what we've got going on with that. The Black Death in Flint. A rat guest star? I don't actually have a rat to bring on stream, so I don't think that it will be a rat guest star. All right, so last call. Anybody got anything going on? Anybody got some any questions or comments or anything like that? Live trap? Oh no, rats in Mississippi are no. They are mean and they are evil, and they will eat your face off. I would not want to bring one of them, even as a joke. What? Not even as a joke. Everybody gets the plague. You get the plague. You get the plague. Where's my list of people that I rated? There used to be a list of people that I've rated, and I could tell who I had rated recently. And I can't remember where those are. Oh, fiddlesticks. Have we recently rated the Walterverse? I feel like we haven't, but then I started like to raid Walterverse, and I feel like we might have recently rated Walterverse. Have we rated the Walterverse? I don't think we have, but I think we're going to. Even if we have, we'll just go raid him again, because he's a cool cat. Okay, cool. We're going to go raid Walterverse. All right, so thank you, everybody. The next time that you'll see me online is on Thursday. We'll be here for our regularly scheduled trip and Adventures in History. We'll be starting a new phase. We'll be looking at the good old-fashioned 6th century. 6th century. We're going to be looking at the year 500 to 600, and we're going to start over in Asia like we usually do, and we're doing a bit of a combined stream between Korea and Japan. And Korea was at a big spot last time, and they're going to kind of fall down. But Japan's actually going to get themselves together. And for the first time in Japanese history, we're going to be able to put a conclusive date on someone's rule. So it'll be interesting stuff to talk about. But for the moment, we are about to go raid. Not Simonson. We're about to go raid the Walterverse, who is a delightful game streamer who has an incredibly high level of production quality to his streams. If you hang around long enough, you might get to see him do a fabled pants reveal. You might also get to see one of his various transitions that are just very, very well done. He's got an MFA, a Master's in Fine Arts, and he teaches theater classes. He's a really great dude, and he streams wearing a three-piece suit. So he's a cool cat. We're gonna go raid Waltiverse. As always, our battle cry when we get there is adventure, and if you have those lovely adventure hat emotes, you can throw those in the chat. Until then, I will see everybody on Thursday. Hope you have a good one, and see you around.